All right, let's go to the next one. This is Matt Walsh.
Fox News host Tucker Carlson reacted on Thursday evening to the arrest of a Canadian minister who protested a drag queen event for children. Derek Reimer of Mission 7 was arrested after he protested a drag queen story hour at Calgary Public Library on Saturday. Video shows him shoved to the ground by attendees as he proclaimed that Jesus Christ is Lord and quoted biblical passages about homosexuality. This is what they're doing in Canada now. They're arresting people for that. Carlson also referenced professional Christians who have frequently remained silent on governmental overreach and widespread disregard for biblical sexual ethics. Carlson said, where is David French, Beth Moore, Tim Keller? All these people who are defending Christianity as actual Christians are being arrested for being Christian. Not a word. I'm glad that you brought this up because this is specifically on the issue of the sexualization of children, the drag queen events, transgenderism, gender ideology. And I have often had the same question as Tucker Carlson, which is all of these self-professed Christian leaders, where are they on this issue? I get this question a lot in Q&As and we're going around giving speeches, and I hear this question from people. Where's the church on this issue? Why aren't they saying anything? The actual leaders of churches. That's a very good question. And I think that this, when it comes to a litmus test for a self-professed, self-appointed Christian leader, you couldn't ask for a better one than this issue in particular on the gender issue. Because what we get from a lot of these people, David French is one of them. If they're going to wade in to this topic, it's to do the tone policing thing. It's to say, well, there are excesses on that side, people that are pushing. There are excesses, sure. But we have to be good Christians. We have to be nice and compassionate. What you don't hear them ever do is actually take on the ideology itself, which tells you everything you need to know about them.
So we have Matt Walsh echoing, was it Tucker Carlson, about David French and Beth Moore and I guess Russell Moore and these Christians that are popular evangelicals, and they're not speaking out. And I remember Russell Moore getting a lot of flack on Twitter when he didn't say anything about the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And I see David French. I don't know much about him, but I see a lot of his tweets, and I don't follow him, but I see a lot of his tweets, and I see a lot of people, a lot of Christians interacting with it. A lot of the Christians in our channel that I follow, for example, interacting with David French. And I see David French always trying to, it's my same problem that I gave with the example when I talked about the urban apologists, how they always punch in one direction, and it seems like David French is one of those people that only punches in one direction. He says he's a conservative, but he's always punching right, and I think that that's weak. So what do you think about that, the idea of Christian leaders? Because I guess it depends on the leader. Because I think you'll hear Al Mohler.
I think if something's a big cultural issue, big enough that it's captivating the nation, and you're a Christian leader in some meaningful sense of that word, you ought to have kind of made it clear, or off, unless you don't know. And if you don't know about some of these type of issues,
like the gender issue, biblical sexuality.
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, I don't have a problem saying I think that I think that the transitioning of kids is horrific. I think people know what I think about abortion. You've been clear about all of these things.
Yeah.
I don't care if I don't want to buzz market for these companies that have done this, want to take on Dylan Mulvaney as some sort of a mascot. We have a mascot here on Trinity Radio, and his name is Pritchett Prime, and he's sitting in front of that blue TV screen over there. So no, we're not down with that sort of stuff, but the reality is we do love those people. But I agree with Walsh about this. Now, whether or not any particular person thinks that Walsh does this consistently or does this right or is too mean or whatever else.
Yeah, didn't he get in trouble for being too mean by a lot of people? Here recently.
Yeah, there's a discussion to be had there. I grant that, but I will say this is being a Christian does not always mean just being nice.
Yeah,
nice is that doesn't. Yeah. That doesn't
listen to Bono. Jesus wasn't even nice all the time.
That's right. Why did sepulchres full of dead men's bones?
Yeah.
Right. You listen. To be a Christian means to love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself, and do it. And at minimum, believe what Jesus believed as best you can, and do what Jesus did. It has to be what it means to be a Christian, is to try and be like Jesus in the ways that you're supposed to be like Jesus. Right. Have to qualify everything around here, but that's the truth. But that may mean the most loving thing to someone may be telling them something that they don't want to hear, and is shocking to them. You know, like we talk
So
about.
okay, well, hang on. Shocking.
Hold on.
What do you
This
mean?
is like the hell thing. This is like with the hell thing. We were just talking about hell, but I think that these two issues, sexuality, sexual ethics, and things like that, and the hell thing, are two things that, trust me, as a guy who has looked at thousands at this point of videos and TikToks, looking at why people say they walked away from Christianity, those two come close to the top of the list.
Yeah.
And so you know, when it comes to something like the gender and the sexual stuff, the most loving thing to do might be to tell them, when I spoke on hell, this is what I was going to say, is the separate issue, obviously. But when someone, I gave this example, like, well, yeah, but you have all this religious trauma from people growing up and hearing about judgment and all of that sort of thing. Even if they didn't hear the eternal conscious torment thing, they grow up with this fear of judgment and God's upset with me and all of these kind of things about this. Well, the truth about it is, with hell, and with the sexual ethics thing, I've completely lost my train of thought because I saw you looking at your phone and it distracted me.
Sorry.
Oh, I know what it is. People say religious trauma and all that sort of thing. But look, if you go to, as I said before, if a person is, and I'm not comparing smoking to anything, we're talking about hell here. But if a man is a smoker and he goes to his doctor and his doctor finds out, oh, he's got like stage 4 lung cancer. I don't know if I'm using the medical terminology right, but really bad lung cancer.
My dad died of stage 4 lung
Okay, stage 4 lung cancer. Or maybe it's not stage 4. What's one where they could still do something about it? Maybe they could. Yeah. I know that lung cancer is particularly rough, but let's just say there's one they could do something about. It's going to be hard to tell this guy this. It's going to be traumatic for him to hear that he's got cancer. It's going to kill him, that he doesn't need to smoke. They may have to do some surgery or something, or some horrific treatment. That would be a horrific thing and traumatic for him and terrible. But if it's true, he needs to know. And the same is true about hell. Right. If it's true, you need to know. And we need to, and the most loving thing for the doctor to do would be to tell him. And the most loving thing for a Christian to do would be to preach the good news. And so with the gender type stuff too, if this is not healthy, whether you affirm Christianity or not, then it is the loving thing, not healthy, not good for society, not good for the person, whatever it is, whatever thing that's wrong with it, the loving thing is to tell them.
Fine. Grant all of that. Now, how do you tell them? That's what everyone wants to know, because you say that's shocking, that's traumatic on the gender issue. Great. How do you break the news of cancer or the truth about the gender issue to someone? That's what people want to know. And does Matt Walsh do it right?
I think these guys would say it like, and I don't think, well, okay, there's truth in this hyperbolic statement.
Yeah.
For many people, well, this isn't hyperbolic if I qualify it with many people. For many people, it wouldn't matter. If you are opposed, that's the primary.
Right, because I was kind of sympathetic.
But it should matter to us. How we react,
because I'm an old grumpy man. I get that. So I was more sympathetic towards Matt Walsh when people piled on him for how he treated the one transgender person, Dylan, whoever it was. But I agree with you that you and I have talked about this publicly, and we've never been that, I guess, blunt. And if you want us to call it rude or mean-spirited, fine.
Which part? What he said about Dylan?
Yeah. But you and I get accused of we're transphobe, hateful, bigots, no matter what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a part of you that says, well, if you're going to get called that anyway, might as well take a few heads off. But
why? Where does that come from?
Right. But the other part of me...
Take a few heads off.
Like, go all...
No, I know what you mean.
Matt
like,
Walsh.
shut them down with rhetoric.
Yeah.
Like if they're going to call me this, I'm just going to go ahead and say everything that I want to say about this. This, like...
But you and I don't do that because, like, we temper that desire sometimes to just take a few heads off with the fact that we still have to, even... There are people who are going to hate you no matter what, but there are people who won't. And so you've got to be, I think, measured and sober-minded about it and not just fly off the handle. But I can think of 2 instances at 2 different churches where you and I have been called to the principal's office, so to speak, over how we address this issue that was which was as kid-gloved as possible, and still was like, I don't know, that was a little bit too far. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that will happen.
So it's just like, no matter, you can't win.
I told one pastor, I told one pastor, and you were in the room.
Yeah.
I told one pastor, I said, I said, I don't have to talk about this subject.
Yeah.
But if I am to talk about this subject, I cannot say less than this.
Right.
Okay. If you ask me to say less than this, I feel like I'm balking on my convictions.
Right. And so I understand that there might be a hesitancy of Christian leaders to speak out about this because they don't know how to navigate those waters.
Mm-hmm.
And even you were called, what? You were the nicest bigot, but you were still called a bigot.
Nicest, most loving bigot they ever saw.
Right. When you were talking, what were you talking about?
Homosexuality.
Yeah, right. And they said, but you were still a bigot. And so I understand that some people may have a difficulty trying to navigate how they go to speak about this, because no matter what you do, there are going to be the loudest voices and those who disagree with you who are going to shout you down and call you a bigot. And the temptation is to do, Matt Walsh or beyond Matt Walsh in response to it. And I think that you probably need to, at least if you're in ministry, if you're a pastor, you don't need to be up there doing what Matt Walsh does. But I don't have a problem with what Matt Walsh does, if I'm being honest with you. I would have a problem with me doing it, but I don't mind that somebody is doing it. I guess, is that fair to say?
You can say whatever you want.
But just, I mean, is that reason? I'm saying, should I be against, if it's not right for me, it's not right for me.
I'll tell you this right now.
Yeah.
I'll just say this right now. I don't care what you say about it. The fact is that there is a lot we could say about each of these commentators, and obviously Christians aren't going to agree with Christians on everything and all that sort of thing. The thing that I think one could highlight that has happened as a result of Walsh in terms of like actually doing something is what happened with Vanderbilt Medical Center, and anywhere where what they have done, and this has been primarily in Tennessee, has affected whether children have access to some of these affirmation things.
Certainly, and I understand a take no prisoners attitude when you're mutilating kids, for sure. And so when you're under that kind of thing, then absolutely, I mean, your condemnation should be as strong as possible. But his strongest condemnations about that thing went against a particular person on TikTok, not necessarily that issue. Or at least what he got in trouble for, right? So I think
Walsh got in trouble.
Yeah, for how he responded to Dylan, but that wasn't this. I mean, the issue that he's addressing is bound up into that. But I'm just saying, I think your condemnation, you can be as strong as Matt Walsh is on the issue itself, but you don't necessarily have to target a specific individual, even if that individual represents that whole thing that you're trying to take down. I think that might be some helpful advice to pastors who want to speak out on this. It's the issue.
We're going to go
necessarily need to. You don't need
talk
to
about the person, right?
Target.
We're going to go to another video, but first, I find it interesting that are these conservatives mostly right? Yes or no? We have the poll going, and for a while it was 50-50. This may be the most divided poll we've ever done. And currently, there have been 40 votes, and 47% say yes, these conservatives are mostly right, and the no is 52%.
Well, yeah. Well, I actually agree with Matt Walsh that I think that the specific people he pointed out, they need to make some concrete statements of where they are on this position, because from what I've seen on just Twitter, it's just a bunch of meandering around it and then whining about conservatives when they claim to be conservatives. And I'm like, okay, but that's fine. But you also, from what I understand, y'all are self-professed Christian leaders in the evangelical circles. I know that David French and Russell Moore are doing this politics for Christians thing. You have to speak clearly on
I think the
issues.
transitioning kids thing and abortion are two topics that he's right. These are good test things. Like, I don't like the way that sounds exactly. I don't know
test cases.
I don't know exactly what I would mean by that. These are two topics where a pastor should be able to just tell you what he thinks about this.
Right.
And if he can't, I'm confused and I've got problems.
Yeah. And you should be called out for it, I think.
Here we've got good question. If Jesus shed his divinity, my wisdom is as good as his. Well, that's not even necessarily true. But if he was fully God all the time, he blundered, suggesting to disregard cleanliness. Pritchett, what do you think this is trying? It's saying, look, if Jesus shed his divinity. Okay, so is this someone saying we don't have to care about Jesus? Basically, if Jesus shed his divinity, basically, I'm as wise as he is.
That's not necessarily true.
That's what
on
I said.
The face of it.
If he was fully God all the time, he blundered, suggesting
they disregard
cleanliness.
Well, the one instance I could think of where he disregarded
the washing of hands.
Yeah, was more of a Pharisaical thing than it was a Torah thing.
So if he was fully God all the time, so is this person trying to talk? I'm not trying to misunderstand you. Good question. I'm trying to understand. Well, I am trying to understand, and it sounds like you're a modalist or something, and saying, look, Jesus. I don't know. Well, maybe you want to clarify that.
Yeah, but
thank you for the super chat.
Yeah.
All right,
I don't think he blundered.